Hello folks, this is Sullla once again. Welcome back. It's good to be putting up a video once again. Thanks to people who have emailed me or passed on messages expressing concern, wondering what's going on. Nothing bad has happened. Just want to give everybody first a quick update on what's been going on, and then we'll look at the most recent patch here for League of Legends, which just came out 2 days ago. Nothing bad has happened. I've just been really busy and didn't really have time to go through and put together any videos for about the last, I guess, about 5 weeks at this point. But no, I haven't been in jail. Nothing happened to me. I haven't been in the hospital. Nothing like that. The biggest thing that happened was in the month of January, I was teaching a winter term class, which is a short class that only meets for a couple weeks. And basically we have to do an entire semester in the course of just a couple weeks. So I was doing a class where we were in class for about 3.5 hours each day, every day. So that included doing 2 lectures each day, and then leading a discussion section, and then doing the grading for all my students, and then grading their papers and their exams. And it was really, really busy, and I just didn't have a lot of time to get around to putting videos together. And for that matter, I wasn't really playing a lot of games either, because I didn't really have time to play a lot of games. And anyway, everything just was really crazy for a couple weeks and just didn't really have time. I still haven't even logged into League of Legends in 2014 yet, and it's been 6 weeks since the new year started, so we'll see about that. But in any case, hopefully put together this video here for the patch review, and want to try to get some footage of some of the champions that were reworked in this patch. Xerath in particular. Maybe we'll take a look at Skarner as well. If you guys want me to look at a specific champion or a specific pro player, then feel free to post in the comments and I'll see what I can find in terms of replays that are out there. And other stuff that still needs to be finished is we still need to finish the Civ 4 game, the Babylon Always War game, which has been on the back burner for months now. Still have to finish that and get to whatever other stuff that's out there. But in any case, everything's fine. Like I said, thanks to the people who emailed asking concern, but everything's no problem, just been really busy. So let's go ahead and look at this patch, shall we? Never actually did one of these videos for patch 4.1. This is patch 4.2. I would say that this is the Xerath Rework Patch. We do have a new champion coming out, Vel'Koz, but I don't think he'll be out until the next patch, as I understand it. Don't think he's going to be released until the next patch, because Vel'Koz just went on the PBE, the public beta environment. So this looks like the Skarner and Xerath Rework Patch. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Overall, this is not a huge patch. It's relatively minor. The champion reworks are the 2 biggest things. Let's see, client updates, repair system. Basically, they are telling you not to mod the client. Ticker, that they've reworked what the ticker looks like to upgrade the notification box. I guess that's nice. They've reworked what the game invites look like, updated the layout of the invite, start game, and quit buttons. I'll have to log into the client and see what this actually looks like. And they finally removed the Journal of Justice from the client, since they had not updated it. They had not updated the Journal of Justice since early 2012, as I understand it. And they had that link sitting there that was very badly out of date. I never really cared about the Journal of Justice. I thought it was kind of silly, but I know some people liked it and that they enjoyed that kind of stuff. I'm a little surprised that Riot hasn't just gotten some community person to write this stuff. It's not like there's any shortage of people that would be willing to do it. You could probably get someone to write Journal of Justice entries completely for free in the community, so I'm a little surprised they haven't just done that, since it does appear to be rather popular with the community. Again, I really don't care about the fictional life stories of these characters, but other people seem to, so feels like a missed opportunity. Anyway, League's pick order, they've changed pick order a little bit for ranked play. In the past, the way it always worked is pick order went by your matchmaking rating, the hidden number that actually determines everything of what goes on. The whole league point system is basically a big joke. It's all a sham. Everything's actually determined by matchmaking rating, which is a number you never see at any point in time. They've reworked this slightly so that the pick order is now random and not determined by the hidden matchmaking rating. So everyone that gets queued into a game has an equal random chance of being the first pick, which I suppose is kind of nice. I guess that's okay. Basically, I think that this is Riot trying to avoid some of the embarrassment of matchmaking rating not lining up with the league system, where you could fairly frequently have people whose matchmaking rating was way above or way below their league placement. And then you'd have weird stuff like someone who is Silver 1 trying to get into Gold and has a really high matchmaking rating. And you have the Silver 1 player who's picking before like a Gold 2 player because their matchmaking rating is actually higher than that Gold 2 player. So I think that this is mostly Riot trying to hide, again, how the matchmaking stuff works. is my understanding. But basically, matchmaking rating determines who gets queued into a game together. Once you're in that game, it's just random where you get your picks, basically. So that's what it is. And then for players in a duo, if either player is chosen as first pick, the team captain will be assigned first pick, and the other member of the duo will get whatever position the captain received from the randomizer. So if you're duo queuing, you actually have a really good chance of getting first pick now. I guo that's sort of a little hidden benefit, is duo queue players have a much higher chance of getting first pick, because you basically have a 40% chance that one of you will be first pick, and then that'll be assigned to whoever was the team captain, whoever was the one who sent the invite. So duo queue, a little buff for the duo queue people, for people who play duo queue. Vision system, basically fixing some bugs, trying to fix some of the endless bugs that have been around forever, whereby you have a ward and a brush, and yet it still somehow doesn't see something, even though it looks like it would. So they're trying to fix those bugs. We'll see if they've gotten them down. I tend to doubt that, because these bugs have been around forever. But they're trying to clean up some of the vision stuff in the brush. And the long battle against the minimap visual bug. We'll see if they actually manage to fix this. They even say it's not a complete fix. Basically, people popping up on the minimap where they don't actually exist. Like, you can sometimes see a character portrait just like pops up in a weird place and no one is actually there. Well, that's been around forever too, so we'll see if they can make some improvements. Icon updates, they changed Soraka and Ashe's ability icons. I'll have to log into the game and see what they look like now. I have not seen them yet. And then updated some of the particles for Flash, Clairvoyance, Ghost, and Revive. Nobody uses Clairvoyance or Revive, so who cares? But Ghost and Flash now have new particles, and Flash has a new sound. Again, I'll have to look and check that out, see what it looks like. I have not actually seen this yet, because the patch has only been out for about 2 days, and I haven't logged into the game. Okay, this is really the meat of this patch, is the rework to Xerath and the rework to Skarner. Sort of long story short, if you're not interested in watching the rest of this, people seem pretty happy with the Xerath rework overall. He feels like he's in a pretty good place. How strong he is, I'm not sure yet. Need some more data. Skarner, people do not seem to like the Skarner changes. If anything, this feels like a nerf to Skarner, and he really did not need to be nerfed because he was barely seeing play as it was. But anyway, let's go through it and look. Xerath got a complete overhaul of his kits. I kind of like the old Xerath kit, but it was a little bit weird. I don't think it ever really worked out. The logic behind Xerath is he was described as being a mage version of a siege tank, like from StarCraft. The idea that you'd be able to deal a lot of damage from a distance, but you'd be really immobile. And I don't think that they ever really got that. This is an attempt to try and rework this and basically try to get that feeling. So we'll see if they succeed. And again, I don't know how strong this is. I'm going to have to poke around and look at some videos from High Elo and see what's going on. But in any case, let's look at what they did. General base mana, his base mana is slightly lower, but he gets more scaling mana per level. That's probably a slight nerf, because I think he has to get to, let's see, what is he? He lost 12 mana. Hard to say. He gets back to the old level at about level 6 or 7, and then after that you have more. Not really a big deal. He also had slightly lower mana regen, but gets more scaling mana regen with levels. So again, none of this is really that big a deal. This, though, is a bigger deal. Nerf to auto attack range from 550 down to 525. That actually is a pretty big deal, since auto attack range is a big deal. So they did shorten his auto attack range, and the reason why they did this was because of his new passive. New passive, Mana Surge. Every 10 seconds, your next basic attack, your next auto attack, restores extra mana. Starts at 30, goes up to 195, and attacking an enemy champion restores double the amount of mana from this passive. So you can see what they're trying to do here. The idea being that Xerath will get mana back for auto-attacking, but that forces him to get close to minions, and specifically, if you want to get the full benefit, to get close to whoever he's laning against. So that's sort of the push and pull in his kit here. The trade-off is Xerath is a long-range mage. You'll be able to see from these skills in a second. He's long-range, but if you want to make use of his passive, you have to get close to whoever you're up against, and so that's sort of like the risk and reward in his kit, is you've got to get close to auto-attack to make use of his passive. So that'll be kind of an interesting dynamic. I like the idea. We'll see if it works in practice, but I like the idea. Okay, his Q, this is clearly his bread and butter skill. This is the skill they want you to max first. I'm sure all Xerath players will. This is very similar to the old Q, the old Arcano Pulse. Damages all enemies in a line. Here's the damage. It's pretty solid. It's not huge, but it's pretty solid. Good AP ratio, 0.75. That's maybe a little on the high end for a skill that has such a low cooldown. But 0.75 ability power ratio. Cooldown is quite nice. Starts at 9 seconds, down to 5 seconds. This may have to be tweaked later. That's an awful low cooldown With max CDR, that's only a 3-second cooldown. Mana cost is reasonable, maybe a little on the high end for the mana cost, but again, plays into his passive. Maybe a little high on the mana cost. The big thing is channeling will increase the ability's range. Default range is 700. That's about average. Roughly average, maybe slightly on the low side for a lot of mage skills, but you can channel it for 1.5 seconds to increase the range to 1400, and that is a very high range. That is much higher than most skills in this game, so really good range if you sit and channel for 1.5 seconds. The trade-off is you do lose your movement speed, so you do get slowed while channeling this skill. Again, think of this as being like a mage equivalent of Varus when he fires his arrow. Like Varus has the Q, his own arrow on the Q, and you hold it down to channel and you can shoot the arrow for a longer range. So this is a very similar idea to that, only of course it's a mage skill instead of an AD skill. And you can hold a full range channel for up to 1.5 seconds. And of course you lose your movement speed. So it looks like a good skill, good damage, very above average AP ratio, very low cooldown. This is going to be really good poke for sieging situations. I can just imagine that a team is sieging down a tower in mid, and Xerath is just poking at 1400 range every like 3 or 4 seconds. That's going to be pretty difficult to deal with. So that's really plays into Xerath's strengths, is his long range damage, his long range poke. Of course, his trade-off is he's not very mobile because you lose the movement speed. The rest of his kit, not as interesting, at least until we get to the ult. W, Eye of Destruction. This is a new skill. It was not called Eye of Destruction before. Calls down a ground-targeted blast of energy, deals magic damage to all enemies caught within the blast, and slows. If you get caught in the center of the blast, you take more damage, and a very high AP ratio, 0.9, if you get caught in the middle. Enemies are slowed by 80% instead. So the outer edge of the blast, not much in the way of slow, only 10%, but 60% scaling up to 80% if you get caught in the middle. So that's a lot of damage and a lot of slow on this skill. I'm assuming that this is, I believe this is a point-and-click skill shot, so it's not automatically targeted damage. This will be a skill shot. Cooldown is about average, maybe a little on the high side for this. 10-second cooldown at max rank. Mana cost, can see. Range 1000. So wow, again, good range on this skill. Very nice range on this skill. Similar deal for his E. Again, range 1000. Fires an orb of raw magic in a straight line. First enemy hit takes fairly low magic damage. Okay, but not great magic damage. 80 up to 200. Low ability power ratio, only 0.45. Takes magic damage and is stunned for between 0.75 and 2 seconds. Stun duration is based on how far the orb traveled. It doesn't say, but I'm assuming you get stunned for longer duration if it is a longer distance, is my guess. Now, what this doesn't say is how fast this projection travels, and that I will have to see in-game. So the question is whether this is like a very slow-moving skill shot, or if this is like a fast skill shot. That I do not know. But the range is really good, and if you are able to get a 2-second stun, which again, remember, this is a skill shot. This is not point-and-click harass. This is a skill shot. The obvious idea is that you try to hit somebody with this, with the E, and then that sets up an automatic hit with the W, and an automatic hit with the Q, presumably, if you can get the stun off. So that would be, I'd assume that would be your combo, is maybe you hit them with a Q, then with an E, then while they're stunned, you hit them with a W, and then maybe a second Q, if the cooldown's low enough, something like that. But it's very clear, Q is your skill you max first, W max second, E is your 1-point skill. That's a fairly standard skilling order. This is very clearly designed to be a 1-point skill. You do not get more stun duration for putting more points in it. You don't really get anything except extra damage, and this skill is not really intended for damage. It's intended for crowd control. So Q, then W, then E, and of course you scale your ult when it's up. Finally, W, this is a new ultimate, Rite of the Arcane. It's similar to his former one, which was like Arcane Barrage. Yeah, here it is. It was formerly known as Arcane Barrage. Similar to this, but a little bit different. The biggest difference is this has much more range. So basically, Xerath roots himself in place, similar to the old W that Xerath had. Roots himself in place, so you cannot move while using this skill, so you got to be careful when you use it. But roots himself in place, gains 3 shots of Arcane Barrage, very long-range magic artillery, deals decent damage. I wouldn't say that this is enormous damage. If you hit all 3 shots, it deals good damage. Deals 190, 245, 300, plus 0.43 ability power. And what a bizarre ratio this is, 0.43? Usually everything ends with a 0 or a 5, but whatever, 0.43 ability power ratio. Deals magic damage to all enemies hit. You can cancel the effect early. Half of the cooldown is refunded if no shots were used. So again, this is a skill shot. You get basically you get 3 shots, and you have to try and hit enemies with them. If you hit all 3, you deal a lot of damage, but they're skill shots, so you're not guaranteed to hit. Here's the big thing, though. Check out the range. 3,200 range at rank 1, up to 5,600 range at rank 3. That is just absurd range. That is, I believe it's the same range as Twisted Fate gets on his ult when he hits level 16. So basically, from the mid lane, I've seen the range indicator. From the mid lane, you can hit bottom lane with this, and from the mid lane, you can hit top lane with this. If you take, I think, a few steps into the river. So basically, this is a mini global ult, and you get 3 shots. People have shown that if you have enough ability power, like really a lot, like 700 ability power or something, you can stand in mid and you can just ult like the blue buff from mid lane, and you can kill it in the 3 shots. It's pretty ridiculous, but you do need like an absurd amount of ability power to do that. You do need like 600 or 700. So anyway, this is a pretty cool skill. Again, best comparisons are like to Twisted Fate Ultimate in terms of the range, and also to Ziggs Ultimate, the Super Mega Inferno Bomb, in terms of the distance. Kind of similar to that, but instead of 1 bomb that you're tossing out, you have 3 skill shots, and the actual target area is not that big. Like, you don't hit that much when you use this, but you do get 3 shots. If you hit them all, it deals a lot of damage, and you can do it from extremely far away. So overall, it seems like a pretty smart rework. Again, whether Xerath is overtuned or undertuned is yet to be seen in terms of these numbers, but hopefully Riot has gotten it right in terms of what they're trying to do, creating someone who is not very fast, not too mobile, but has really strong range and really good poke. I think that we'll see, if Xerath's numbers are in the right place, then we'll probably see him in some poke team comps. But he might just be really weak, and I don't know. On paper, his stuff looks pretty solid. Looks pretty good on paper, but you never know until you actually get into game. So we'll have to see on that. Okay, Skarner. Skarner, I'm a little surprised that he was reworked. I thought he was in an okay place. He wasn't especially popular, but there was nothing really wrong with his kit. Skarner's unique ability was, sort of his unique place was he was able to permanently slow people. Like, he didn't have a gap closer, but if he could get up next to someone and just keep queuing them over and over and over again, he could just slow them to the point where they could never get away. And that was kind of his unique role, was that he could do that as a jungler. That along with his ultimate. So let's see what they did. General, they lowered his attack speed by 1%. Pretty minor. They did that because of how they changed his Q. Passive, Energize, unchanged. This is deals with how he puts his abilities on people. But anyway, left his passive unchanged. Excuse me. They really did rework his 3 main skills, though. They shifted a lot of stuff around. So Q used to slow the target. It still deals the same amount of damage. Basically, his Q's on a really short cooldown. His Q's on a super short cooldown. You can use it like every 2 seconds if you're making use of his passive. You just Q, and that's sort of his main source of damage. You max this skill first. But what it used to do is it used to slow the target. Now his Q does not slow. They moved that to his E. Now what it does is when a target's hit by his Q, Skarner gains extra attack speed, and that can stack up to 3 times. So it starts at 8% up to 16%. So he can stack up to 48% attack speed at rank 5. Which you're going to do because this is the skill you max first on Skarner. Whoop! Apparently we've got the icon here. Wow. Apparently we can drag this icon around. Not that it'll move. But in any case, yes, so when a target's hit, he can get up to 50% attack speed. But it doesn't slow. So what this does is it does actually speed up his jungle clear because he gets more attack speed than he had before. His attack speed used to be on his W, and you'd lose it when the shield broke. So his jungle clear is faster, but he no longer can perma-slow. And the old Skarner players have generally not been big fans of this because that was kind of what made Skarner unique, was his perma-slow. Anyway, his W, let's look at what they did here. Lowered the cooldown from 18 down to 16 seconds. That's kind of nice. Movement speed bonus is slightly higher. You can see it used to be 15 up to 23%. Now it's 16 up to 32%. So that looks like a buff, except that now it ramps up over the first 3 seconds. And that is not what you want. So basically, you slowly accelerate up to that movement speed instead of just getting the movement speed bonus immediately. That's not a good thing. That's actually a nerf. And overall, I would probably prefer the old system. I'd rather have 23% attack speed immediately, or excuse me, I'd rather have 23 movement speed immediately rather than scale up to 32% over 3 seconds. So yeah, I can see why people are not huge fans of that change. Base shield and ability power ratio have been increased, so you actually do get more shield, and the AP ratio is higher, which isn't that useful for Skarner because you don't build AP on Skarner, although Skarner does quite typically get a Sheen in the form of either Iceborne Gauntlet or Trinity Force. So you do make a little use of that, but not much. So anyway, more shield, you got a better AP ratio, and you get a higher movement speed bonus eventually, but it ramps up instead of getting it initially. And no longer, of course, gets an attack speed bonus because the attack speed bonus is now on the queue. So overall, kind of a meh change, I guess. Kind of like, overall, you get some things are better, but it's all kind of traded off for other things that are worse. Alright, and then finally his E. This is Skarner's projectile, his only ranged attack where he shoots out the little crystal from his tail. Cooldown increased, 14 seconds now, up from 10 seconds. Targets hit are now slowed by 30%, scaling up to 50% for 2.5 seconds. The missile range is larger, missile width is smaller, and the missile speed is slower. You also have lost the heal function on his E. Previously, Skarner would hit somebody with his E, and they would get a mark, and he could heal himself by consuming it. This is kind of where the Skarner rework went wrong, based on what people have been saying. There have been the high elo people, the Diamond, the few people who play Skarner in Diamond have been posting about this. Number one, the cooldown's longer. It's significantly longer. 10 seconds up to 14 is a lot longer. Targets hit are now slowed, and 50% slow is nice, but that slow only lasts for 2.5 seconds. And the skill then goes on cooldown for another 14 seconds. So you can only keep someone slowed for a very minimal amount of time. Again, contrast this to the old Skarner, who had a slow on his Q, and you could basically Q someone about every 1.5 to 2 seconds. And yeah, the slow wasn't 50%. I think it was around 30%. It was around 20 to 30%. But, you could keep them slowed permanently. You could just keep queuing them over and over and over again. Now you hit someone with the E, and yeah, they're slowed for 50, they get the slow, but it only lasts for 2.5 seconds. They can flash away or dash away or whatever, and you can't reapply that slow to them afterwards. You can't get that slow back again because this skill has such a low cooldown. What this basically means is Skarner's ganks pre-6 are really bad. I mean, they weren't good before, but they're much worse now. And it also basically forces you to put a point in E. Most Skarner players did not skill their E skill at all. They just went QW, 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 and they ignored E until like level 13 or 14. Now you have to put a point in E or you have no ganking presence whatsoever. The missile range is higher, but again, the width is smaller and the speed is lower, and you no longer get the heal ability on the E either. So it's kind of puzzling here. I mean, for a kit that the general idea when you rework someone is you're trying to make them stronger or put them in a better place. Skarner feels weaker, and like I said, he's kind of lost what made him unique as a champion, his ability to perma-slow on his Q. So I can see why people don't like this. And I mean, the real problem is here, as I just said, here on his E, the fact that you can only slow someone for 2.5 seconds, and then that skill goes on cooldown for 14 whole seconds. So you're very limited in what you can do. Plus, this is a skill shot. It's not even point and click. I mean, you'd think that if it's going to be nerfed like this, you'd at least make it like point and click harass. But no, it's still a skill shot. So it's just kind of weird that Skarner is in this place when there's so many other junglers that are just a lot stronger. Like, why would you play Skarner when you could play Elise or you could play Vi or something like that? I mean, like, Vi's kit is so much better than Skarner's, and Elise's kit is so much better in basically every possible way. So it's kind of a weird rework here, in all honesty, kind of weird. His R, his Impale, his other signature skill where he impales someone and drags them around. So apparently they have reworked this a little bit, so it's a little bit easier, that the timing is a little bit earlier, so people can't just like flash away. How this actually works, I'm not 100% sure. Now he roots the target during the wind-up animation. So this is supposed to improve the functionality in his ult a little bit, but I don't think it has made that much of a change. So overall, the early word, again, this within the first 2 days of the patch coming out, is Skarner players are generally do not like this rework and have basically thumbs down on this and do not like the changes. So we will see. Skarner might get some numbers buffs in future patches, but we'll just have to wait and see. That was the big bulk of this patch. That was kind of the meat and potatoes of this one. There's some more minor things. We'll just run through them quickly. Ashe got a minor buff here to her Hawkshot. Hawkshot is Ashe's 1-point skill. You put 1 point in this at level 4, and then you just leave it there until you max it out at the end of the game. So this got buffed. The cooldown went down at higher ranks. Now, again, that's not that big of a deal because you won't scale this until, you know, like level 15 or 17 or whatever. But 40-second cooldown at level 18 actually will help with vision in a lot of ways. This is the more sizable thing, though, is instead of scaling gold, bonus gold on kill, now you get 3 at all ranks. And this is a big buff. I mean, yes, you get less gold at level 18, but nobody cares about that because this is your 1-point skill. You're going to put a point of this at level 4, and now you'll get 3 gold per minion kill instead of getting 1. So that's a nice little buff to Ashe's gold generation. Mundo got a minor nerf in this patch. The missile width on his cleaver is smaller, so it's a little bit harder to hit the cleavers. We'll see if that hurts Mundo's playability. Mundo's playability was hurt in this patch, but not so much due to this, due to a mastery change that I'll get to in a second. So a somewhat modest nerf, but again, you know, the missile width is 25% smaller, so you know it does factor in. Evelyn, Eve, they changed her hate spike, so basically the missile speed moves more quickly to close targets, and it is slower, higher initial missile speed that rapidly decelerates as it travels. So we'll hit things that are close. It starts out faster, but then slows down on the hate spike. What effect that will have, I'm not really sure. I guess what they want Eve is they want Eve to get close to her target, is the idea there. Kale got nerfed rather sizably in this patch right here. Ability power ratio, boop, 1.0, ability power ratio down to 0.6. If you've been watching the LCS matches, you have probably seen a number of teams picking Kale, and they stall the game out into about the 40-minute mark, and then Kale just absolutely destroys people because her Q has a 1-to-1 ratio. Toss out a Q, auto attack with Lich Bane, and people just, their faces melt. I don't know what else to say. So this is a deserved nerf because late Kale game was just absurd, and they're nerfing that. Giving her back a few other things. They increased the heal, the ability power ratio on her heal, on her W, and gave a slight ratio to the movement speed bonus, plus 7% per 100 ability power. Kale actually might get enough ability power to make this matter. So, you know, you get 400 AP, you get a little bit more movement speed, so that's kind of nice. And they took off the mana cost from intervention as well. That said, this is still a nerf overall. That is a big nerf to her Q. Big nerf. We'll see. Will people still play Kale? Probably, because she did get a little bit of extra functionality. And Kale works really well as a counter to certain assassins. She works really well against like someone who's going to do all their damage in a burst, like maybe Syndra or Zed or Fizz to a certain extent. We've seen a lot of people pick Kale against Zed, for example. So she'll probably still be played, but not as much as before, would be my guess. Riven, a little interesting little tweak here. So they increased her shield. She gets 20 more on her shield at all ranks. 70 up to 90, 190 up to 210. But they've cut her health regen further. Her health regen is extremely low now, 2.5 per 5. That is very low. I believe it's actually the lowest in the game, is what I've heard now. Outside of Heimerdinger, who technically has 0 health regen, but he gets health regen through his passive, so that doesn't really count. So I believe this is actually the lowest base health regen. So is this a buff or a nerf? It's kind of hard to say. It's kind of a reworking, but this is really low. I mean, health regen is a hugely important part of this game that's often kind of under the hood. People don't really see these numbers, but she only gets back, what is this, 2.5 per 5. That's really low. She only gets back 1/2 of a hit point every second. Yeah, she gets back 1/2 of a hit point per second. That is terrible. So you almost have to start with a Doran shield now just to get some health regen going in top lane. So anyway, Riven's been nerfed pretty hard from where she was about a month ago, but that's probably needed because Riven was pretty out of control in solo queue. Less so for competitive play, but she was way too strong in solo queue, and she has been toned down considerably at this point. Rumble, particle update to his Q, his flame speeder, now spits real flame instead of meatballs, very nice. Thresh, this is like the 70th Thresh nerf. Thresh has never been buffed, it's just been nerfed. They have lowered his attack range from 475 down to 450. Not huge, but you will feel the difference. Thresh is still, after God knows how many nerfs, still a top-tier support, if not the top-tier support. We still see him first picked all the time. We still see him banned all the time in competitive play. When they designed his kit, it was just like a joke how good they made Thresh. The fact that he can be nerfed like over a dozen times and still be a top tier support, which should tell you about how insane he was when he first came out. Speaking of insane when he first came out, Yasuo! Here's the first of many Yasuo nerfs. You will see many more after this because Yasuo is extremely strong, and I believe... Did I do a patch review when he came out? I honestly can't remember, but Yasuo, very, very strong. Again, the real thing about Yasuo was just he had a very high skill cap, but once players mastered him, he was clearly going to be an extremely strong champion. He gets a lot of bans in the professional play, and has been pretty successful there. So, here we go, the beginning of the Yasuo nerfs. Expect more to come to follow. Nerf to his passive. It now takes 15% more movement to generate a unit of flow, his passive, so you have to walk around more to get his passive up. Visuals, they've added a range indicator around Yasuo when his whirlwind's available. That's kind of nice. Here's another nerf. Passively grants flow when he dashes. It has been nerfed on his E. The fact that his E grants passive flow to begin with is kind of weird. I think that you could just flat out take that away from this ability, and it wouldn't really be necessary. But they've cut the amount of passive flow that you get from 4% scaling up to 20%, down to 3% scaling up to 15%. So fairly modest, but you won't get as much flow from his E. And then finally his ult, his R, they have decreased the cast range from 1300 down to 1200. Now, will this get anyone to stop playing Yasuo? No. No, it will not. These are very minor nerfs, so expect more to come. I'm calling it right now. Patch 4.3 will have further Yasuo nerfs because he is very, very strong. And he's been used heavily in competitive play, in both people playing him and people banning him. So expect more nerfs to come. He is simply has too much movement and way too much damage once he gets his Infinity Edge and his Static Shiv. He starts to output ridiculous amounts of damage. So you will see more Yasuo nerfs to come. Ziggs getting some nerfs here. These are fairly minor. Ziggs, for whatever reason, was overbuffed, and I believe I called it at the time and said Ziggs got overbuffed for no reason. They've slightly decreased the damage on his passive, but so little you almost can't notice. It starts at the same value. It ends at the same value, but it takes longer to ramp up. But it's really minor in terms of these numbers. There's barely any change. Very, very minor. Here's the real nerf. They've decreased the damage on his Minefield, his E skill here. Minions taking 100% damage from all mines, down to 40% damage for each mine they hit beyond the first. For those who remember, this is the way the skill used to work. You would take X amount of initial damage, and then each mine after the first did less damage to minions. But for some reason, about 3 or 4 months ago, they buffed it so all minions took 100% damage from all mines, which was silly because it just made wave clear like impossible. If you've been watching again the pro games, there have been many, many games where Ziggs is in mid, and with the Ziggs wave clear, it's just impossible to push his tower. And that mid tower is still sitting there 30 minutes into the game, and you just can't push it because he just wave clears so fast that it's impossible to get any damage on that mid tower. So this is a well-deserved nerf. It doesn't really hurt Ziggs that much. It just makes it so his wave clear is not completely absurd. As it says here, Explosive Minefield is a little too good as a wave clearing tool. Lets him play passively without any repercussions. Again, this was really obvious when he got buffed back in late Season 3. It was very obvious this was going to happen. Sometimes you do wonder what goes on at Riot headquarters with some of these some of these nerfs and buffs. Anyway, minor stuff here. Removed legacy floating combat text. I don't know what that means. Added ticks to Vilemar's health bar. That is the what is that? That's the spider, the big spider on Twisted Tree Line. So they've added ticks to the health bar like they've done with Baron, I think. Or no, have they done it with Baron? I don't know. I think that they might have. And then finally fixed a bug that stopped the visual display from scaling while the game was paused. Other minor stuff, let's see, Akali's Shadow Dance stacks can be seen in her buff bar. Elise Spider Form fixed a bug where her Spider Form size was smaller than intended, so I guess that's technically a minor nerf to Elise, but not a big deal. Maokai fixed a bug where bonus damage stored in his ult was lower than intended. Sona fixed a bug where the tooltip was improperly showing the AP ratio on her E. They also gave her a very minor buff on the haste and slow ratio. Not a big deal. These ratios are so small that they almost never come into play. Teemo fixed a bug where Toxic Shot could apply some spell effects. Yorick ghouls are no longer immune to slow. So, whoa, watch out there. Yorick on the nerf train. His ghouls no longer immune to slows. So, you know, for all that Yorick play we've been seeing recently. Items, Static Shiv, passive now only critically strikes when the associated attack critically strikes. Makes sense. Warden's Mail and Randuin's Omen, the passive, has had a bug fix where certain minions, Tibbers, Voidlings, Elise Spiderlings, were not being affected by the slow. Okay, minor stuff. This is possibly the biggest change in this patch, right here. The change to the Perseverance Mastery. Perseverance as a mastery, they have cut the health regen in half. This is in the defensive tree. So from 2% of missing health per 5 down to 1% of missing health per 5. This mastery has already been nerfed. It was, I don't know if people remember this, but this was 3% of missing health every 5 seconds when the Season 4 masteries came out initially. If you go back, you look at my the video I did on the masteries when Season 4 began. We talked about this. We said that this mastery was ludicrously overbuffed, like laughably strong. People ran the numbers, and the original Perseverance mastery, 3% of missing health every 5 seconds, that was worth like thousands of gold in stats, where most of the masteries were worth like 50 gold or 100 gold. And this one mastery was worth like 2,000 gold worth of stats. And it was just incredibly obvious that somebody just horribly messed up the math and had no idea what they were doing, and this mastery was ridiculously overpowered. Now, what effect did this have? Well, if you've been watching the professional scene, you might have noticed that top lane has been a bruiser fest. Every single game has been Mundo and Shyvana and Renekton, blah, blah, blah. All tanks, and no one was playing anything other than tanks. That was directly due to this mastery, due to Perseverance. Tanks, all you had to do was stack a bunch of health, Sunfire Cape, Spirit Massage, just build those 2 items. You have so much health that it's impossible to get you out of lane with Perseverance Mastery. That's why we saw those champs being played over and over and over again. That's why we basically didn't see any mages in top lane, you know. We used to see a lot of mages, but they just couldn't lane because Perseverance provided so much health regen to tanks that a mage couldn't be in lane. They just would get, they'd run out of mana, and these monolith tanks, again, Renekton and Shyvana and Mundo, they would just sustain endlessly. You could not get them out of lane, and it was largely due to this mastery. So, now that Perseverance has been nerfed heavily, again, they have cut the value by 2/3 from the beginning of Season 4, finally, we will probably see more diversity in terms of who's going in top lane in professional play. And all I can say is thank goodness it's about time. I think we've seen so many Shyvana versus Mundo top lanes that everybody is sick to death of it. So this is a much applauded change. Whoever did the Season 4 Masteries just really messed up with this one. It was extremely overpowered, and now it is finally being nerfed back into a more balanced state. So that's why I just want just a little explanation on that. And then finally, Summoner's Rift turrets in 4.1 in the last patch, they made it so that top and mid lane outer turrets took less damage from champion attacks. You actually had these weird, again, that was done because Riot did not like the 2v1 lane swaps that people were doing. They wanted to try to force 2v2s in the bottom lane. That said, teams have still kept on going 2v1. But in any case, what they've done here is they have changed the flat damage reduction against champs from being permanent to just the first 8 minutes. So this is kind of like a reversion to what they had before. In a lot of senses. I think Riot realized that this wasn't really working that well. In particular, you'd have these weird situations where people would push the top outer turret, it would go down finally, and then the inner turret would go down in like a second because the inner turret did not have this flat damage reduction. It was just kind of a weird situation. You also had the problem where the mid turret, the mid outer turret, was had this huge flat damage reduction against champions. That would last for the entire game, and then you had champions like Ziggs, or a champion like Gragas, who would just wave clear and wave clear and wave clear, and no one could get rid of these mid-towers, and they would just sit up there for forever. I mean, there were games where you'd be at 35 minutes, and the outer towers and the inner towers would be down in top and bottom, and you'd still have the mid-tower up because, Ziggs and Gragas are sitting in mid, and they're just wave clearing, and you can't get the mid-tower down because you can't get minions close enough, and then when you do get close enough, they have this huge damage reduction against champions. So I like this, getting rid of it. Let's open up the map a little bit more and not have turtling under towers. Turtling under towers does not make for interesting gameplay. So I do like this change. For the first 8 minutes, it's fine, but get rid of the flat damage reduction after that and open up the map, make these towers like every other tower in the game. So I approve of this change. I hated the change I hated the change where they added the flat damage reduction. because it wasn't symmetrical, because it was only in top and mid. So I do like this change. And then finally, Kha'Zix is got a nerf on Twisted Tree Line and on the Crystal Scar, because apparently Kha'Zix is a beast on these maps in 3v3 and in Dominion on the Crystal Scar. So there you go. Like I said, not a huge patch. The biggest changes are the reworks to Xerath and to Skarner, so that's why we spent the most time on them. Again, I'll poke around and I will see if I can find Xerath. It should be pretty easy to find Xerath footage, people playing him, try to find a game where we can look at his skills, and see what we can find for Skarner too. Again, as I mentioned, if you want to request a specific champion or a specific pro player, I'll look around and see what I can find, see if I can get the replay stuff working, and try to find that stuff. And once again, thanks for watching. Thanks for continued support. I really appreciated some of the messages that people sent my way. So that's the plan for upcoming. So we'll get back in this. We'll get some videos running and get back to the former schedule. We'll see where we go from there. But anyway, once again, thanks guys. Good to see you again. And I hope you're all having a nice 2014. See you again soon.